Welcome to the PMP Exam Prep Question Bank series. In this video, I've got 15 exam-style practice questions lined up for you, covering the kind of people, process, and business environment scenarios you'll see on the real PMP exam. Each question comes with the correct answer and a full explanation, including why the wrong options are wrong. Here's how to get the most out of this. When a question appears, pause the video, pick your answer, then hit play to check yourself. Ready? Let's dive in. Question 46. A brand new team with no prior experience working together is beginning a complex project with an aggressive timeline. According to situational leadership principles, which leadership style is most appropriate at this stage? The correct answer is A, a highly directive style, providing clear structure, roles, and close guidance. Situational leadership suggests a more directive style is appropriate for teams low in task-relevant maturity and experience working together, providing the structure they need at this early stage. Now, why the other options are wrong? A fully delegating style, giving the team complete autonomy from day one, is incorrect. Full delegation assumes a high level of team maturity and established working relationships, neither of which exists yet for a brand new team. A completely hands-off style, regardless of team experience, is incorrect. A hands-off approach ignores the team's current stage and risks confusion or missteps on a complex, time-pressured project. The same leadership style used for all past projects, regardless of team composition, is incorrect. Situational leadership specifically calls for adapting style to the team's current situation and maturity, not applying a fixed style regardless of context. Question 47. A key stakeholder has expressed strong resistance to a project decision that has already been formally approved through governance. What is the most constructive way for the project manager to handle this? The correct answer is D. Meet with the stakeholder to understand the source of their resistance and address it with information, involvement, or clarification where possible. Understanding the root of resistance and engaging the stakeholder directly, with information or involvement, is the most constructive way to work toward acceptance, even when a decision won't be reversed. Now, why the other options are wrong? Ignore the stakeholder's concerns since the decision is already approved is incorrect. Ignoring a stakeholder's concerns, even after formal approval, risks continued resistance that can undermine adoption and support later. Exclude the stakeholder from future project communications since they disagree is incorrect. Excluding a resistant stakeholder from communication tends to deepen resistance rather than resolve it. Reverse the approved decision immediately to satisfy the stakeholder is incorrect. Reversing a properly governed decision solely due to one stakeholder's resistance bypasses the governance process without evaluating the actual merits. Question 48. During scope planning, the team is deciding how far to decompose the work breakdown structure. What is the generally recommended guideline for the lowest level work package? The correct answer is B. Decompose until each work package can be reliably estimated and assigned, often reflected by the 8-80 rule, between 8 and 80 hours of effort. The 8-80 rule is a commonly used heuristic. Work packages should be small enough to estimate and manage reliably, typically representing no less than 8 and no more than 80 hours of effort. Now, why the other options are wrong? Decompose every work package down to a single hour of effort for maximum precision is incorrect. Decomposing to the level of individual hours creates excessive management overhead and is not a recommended practice. Stop decomposition at the phase level, regardless of complexity, is incorrect. Stopping at the phase level is usually too high level to support reliable estimating, assignment, and control. Decompose based only on the number of team members available is incorrect. Decomposition should be driven by the nature of the work and estimating control needs, not simply the headcount available. Question 49. A project needs to gather requirements from a large, geographically dispersed group of stakeholders with varying priorities. Which technique is generally most efficient for reaching consensus among many dispersed stakeholders? The correct answer is A. A facilitated workshop or structured group technique, such as a virtual facilitated session designed to surface and reconcile differing priorities. Facilitated workshops and structured group techniques are specifically designed to bring diverse stakeholders together efficiently and drive toward consensus, which fits a large, dispersed group with varying priorities. Now, why the other options are wrong? One-on-one interviews with every single stakeholder is incorrect. Individual interviews with a large, dispersed stakeholder group are thorough but time-consuming and don't inherently drive the group toward consensus. Sending a single, open-ended email asking for feedback with no structure is incorrect. An unstructured request is unlikely to surface conflicting priorities in a way that supports reconciling them into consensus. Only consulting the most senior stakeholder and assuming their view represents the group is incorrect. Relying on only the most senior stakeholder ignores the input of the broader, dispersed group and risks missing significant requirements or conflicts. Question 50. Activity B cannot start until Activity A finishes. What type of logical relationship does this represent? The correct answer is A. Finish to start, FS. A finish to start relationship means the successor activity cannot start until the predecessor activity finishes. Exactly what's described. Now, why the other options are wrong. Start to start, SS, is incorrect. Start to start means both activities start together, or with a lag, not that one must finish before the other starts. Finish to finish, FF, is incorrect. Finish to finish means both activities must finish together, or with a lag. It doesn't govern when Activity B can start. Start to finish, SF, is incorrect. Start to finish, the least common relationship, means the predecessor's start controls the successor's finish, which doesn't match this scenario. Question 51. Early in a project, with limited detailed information available, the project manager uses the cost of a similar past project to develop a rough estimate. Which estimating technique is being used? The correct answer is D, analogous estimating. Analogous estimating uses historical data from a similar past project to develop a rough estimate, which is exactly what's described, a useful technique when detailed information is not yet available. Now, why the other options are wrong. Bottom-up estimating is incorrect. Bottom-up estimating builds an estimate from detailed, granular work package data, which is the opposite of what's available in this early, limited information scenario. Three-point estimating is incorrect. Three-point estimating uses optimistic, pessimistic, and most likely values for a specific activity. It doesn't rely on comparison to a past similar project. Parametric estimating is incorrect. Parametric estimating uses a statistical relationship between historical data and other variables, like cost per square foot, not a direct comparison to one similar project. Question 52. A project's risk register lists 10 identified risks, each scored using a probability impact matrix. What should the project team do with this scoring? The correct answer is B. Prioritize risk response planning toward the risks with the highest combined probability and impact scores. The probability impact matrix exists specifically to help the team prioritize its limited risk response effort toward the risks that pose the greatest combined threat or opportunity. Now, why the other options are wrong. Address risks in the order they were identified, regardless of score, is incorrect. Addressing risks purely in identification order ignores the entire purpose of scoring them for relative priority. Ignore any risk scored as low probability, regardless of its potential impact, is incorrect. A low probability risk can still carry a high impact. The matrix is meant to consider both dimensions together, not to discard low probability risks outright. Score risks once at the start of the project and never revisit them is incorrect. Risk scores should be reassessed throughout the project as new information emerges, not scored a single time and left static. Question 53. A project's budget includes an amount set aside for known risks that have been identified and analyzed, and a separate amount set aside for unforeseen work within the project's scope. What are these two amounts called, respectively? The correct answer is C, contingency reserve and management reserve. Contingency reserve covers identified, analyzed risks, known unknowns, while management reserve covers unforeseen work within scope, unknown unknowns, matching the two amounts described. Now, why the other options are wrong? Management reserve and contingency reserve is incorrect. This reverses the definitions. Management reserve is for unforeseen work, not identified risks, and contingency reserve is for identified risks, not unforeseen work. Cost baseline and cost budget is incorrect. The cost baseline and cost budget describe the overall approved cost plan and total funding, not the specific reserves for known versus unforeseen risk. Direct cost and indirect cost is incorrect. Direct and indirect cost describe how costs relate to the project's deliverables, not how reserves are categorized by risk type. Question 54. During execution, the team discovers that a completed deliverable does not meet its specified requirements due to a coding error. What type of change request should be submitted to correct it? The correct answer is A, a defect repair. A defect repair is the specific type of change request used to correct a component that is not performing as intended or does not meet specifications, which matches a coding error causing non-conformance. Now, why the other options are wrong? A corrective action unrelated to the deliverable is incorrect. While related in spirit, the specific formal change request type for fixing a non-conforming deliverable is a defect repair, not a generic unrelated corrective action. A preventive action is incorrect. Preventive action is aimed at reducing the probability of future negative consequences, not correcting an existing defect that has already occurred. An update to the scope baseline only, with no formal change request, is incorrect. Any correction of this kind still needs to go through the formal change request and change control process, not be treated as an informal baseline edit. Question 55. Multiple versions of a technical design document are circulating among team members, and it's unclear which one reflects the currently approved baseline. What practice should the project team strengthen to prevent this? The correct answer is C, configuration management, including clear version control and identification of the current approved baseline. Configuration management establishes control over document and deliverable versions, ensuring everyone can clearly identify the current approved baseline, directly addressing the described confusion. Now, why the other options are wrong? Quality assurance audits only is incorrect. Quality assurance audits assess process adherence broadly. The specific fix for version confusion is stronger configuration management, not a QA audit alone. Reducing the number of team members with document access is incorrect. Restricting access doesn't solve the underlying version control problem and can hinder legitimate collaboration. Scheduling more status meetings to discuss the document verbally is incorrect. Verbal discussion in meetings doesn't create the systematic version control needed to prevent this kind of confusion going forward. Question 56. A control chart for a manufacturing process shows 7 consecutive data points all on the same side of the mean, though all points remain within the upper and lower control limits. According to common quality control heuristics, what should the team conclude? The correct answer is C. The process should be investigated for a non-random trend, per the commonly used rule of 7. 7 consecutive points on the same side of the mean is a recognized pattern, the rule of 7, suggesting a non-random influence on the process, even though every point individually falls within the control limits. Now, why the other options are wrong? The process is in control and no action is needed, since all points are within control limits is incorrect. Being within control limits alone isn't sufficient. The rule of 7 heuristic flags this specific pattern as a signal of a non-random trend worth investigating. The control limits themselves must be recalculated immediately is incorrect. This pattern calls for investigating the process for a special cause, not first assuming the control limits themselves are wrong. The data points should be discarded as measurement errors is incorrect. Discarding the data without investigation ignores a recognized statistical signal that may indicate a real addressable process issue. Question 57. A project manager needs to give the entire distributed team the same detailed technical update and wants to allow real-time questions and clarification. Which communication method is most appropriate? The correct answer is C, interactive communication, such as a live video conference. Interactive communication, a two-way, real-time exchange like a video conference, is the appropriate method when the goal includes live questions and clarification, not just one-way information delivery. Now, why the other options are wrong? Push communication, such as a one-way email blast, is incorrect. Push communication sends information out, but doesn't inherently support real-time back-and-forth questions and clarification. Pull communication, such as posting the update to a shared portal, is incorrect. Pull communication requires the recipient to seek out the information themselves and doesn't provide the real-time interactive exchange described. Informal hallway conversations with whichever team members are nearby is incorrect. Informal, ad hoc conversations wouldn't reliably reach the entire distributed team with the same consistent update. Question 58. A Kanban team sets a maximum number of items that can be in the In Progress column at any given time. What is the primary purpose of this practice? The correct answer is C, to limit work in progress, WIP, reducing multitasking and helping the team identify bottlenecks. WIP limits are a core Kanban practice. Capping the amount of concurrent work reduces multitasking and makes bottlenecks visible when the limit is consistently hit. Now, why the other options are wrong? To reduce the total number of team members needed is incorrect. WIP limits govern how much work is in progress at once. They don't directly determine staffing levels. To eliminate the need for a backlog is incorrect. WIP limits control flow through active work stages. They have no direct effect on whether a backlog is needed. To guarantee a fixed iteration length is incorrect. Fixed iteration length is a Scrum characteristic. Kanban is a continuous flow method and doesn't require fixed iterations, regardless of WIP limits. Question 59. A Scrum team has completed several sprints and has a known average velocity. How should the team use this velocity during sprint planning? The correct answer is C, to forecast a realistic amount of backlog the team can commit to in the upcoming sprint. Velocity, based on historical completed work, helps the team forecast a realistic, sustainable amount of backlog to pull into the next sprint. Now, why the other options are wrong. To determine each team member's individual performance rating is incorrect. Velocity is a team-level capacity metric, not an individual performance rating, and using it that way misapplies the metric and can damage psychological safety. To set the exact number of hours each task must take is incorrect. Velocity is typically expressed in story points or similar relative units for planning capacity, not as a fixed hourly requirement per task. To determine the project's total fixed price contract value is incorrect. Velocity is an internal planning and forecasting metric. It isn't used to set a project's contract value. Question 16. A Scrum team frequently pulls backlog items into a sprint that turn out to be missing key acceptance criteria, causing rework mid-sprint. What should the team establish to prevent this? The correct answer is C, a definition of ready that backlog items must meet before being pulled into a sprint. A definition of ready establishes clear criteria, such as having acceptance criteria, that an item must meet before it enters a sprint, directly preventing the described mid-sprint rework. Now, why the other options are wrong? A stricter definition of done applied only at the end of the sprint is incorrect. Definition of done addresses whether completed work meets quality standards. It doesn't prevent poorly prepared items from being pulled into the sprint in the first place. Removing acceptance criteria from all backlog items to speed up planning is incorrect. Removing acceptance criteria would make the underlying problem worse, not better, since missing criteria is the root cause described. Extending the sprint length to accommodate incomplete items is incorrect. Lengthening the sprint treats a symptom rather than addressing the root cause of poorly prepared backlog items. And that's a wrap on this video. Nice work getting through those 15 questions. If this helped, you're going to want the complete set, all 1,080 exam-style questions, with full explanations across all 3 PMP domains, are available in my Udemy course, PMP Exam Prep 2026 ECO. 6 full practice exams, 1,080 questions. The link is in the description below. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next video, where I'll walk you through 15 more questions. See you in the next video!